Welcome to day 4 of A Course in Production. Today we're going to be talking about working with your direct reports. I personally believe that if you're in production, you are only as good as you know your teams. I'm not talking about being a spy or being invasive. I mean engaging meaningfully and thoughtfully with your teams as one of the best and most efficient ways that you can support their growth as artists and as leaders. You want to play to people's strengths and help them improve upon their weaknesses, and you can only do that if you've been paying attention truly to their work and presence on the floor. I would also remember that your team is a reflection of your leadership. We never want to give away our problems or send our teams off to another line or show with bad habits. Within each show, we are contributing to a greater studio culture, and so it is imperative that we do right by our teams. So let's talk about the situation in which you're responsible for just one team. If you have just one team, you better know it inside out. A common blind spot that I find for people who are responsible for just one department or team is that you tend to forget that you're part of a larger production. When you're responsible for one team, you have a balancing act on your hands. You must advocate for your team to have the strongest start possible, which means ongoing communication with upstream departments. You must also ensure that you're holding your own team accountable for what they are handing off downstream. In production, we talk a lot about covering our butts. This is a catch-all phrase for any preventative, proactive measures that serve to protect you individually as someone in production or your team as a whole. Now let's talk about the situation in which you have many departments. When you're responsible for a few different teams, you may start to feel like a referee. What is good for one department is not good for another. In these cases, your CG supervisor is your best friend and can help you navigate these possibilities. The benefit of having many departments is that you have an understanding of differing priorities. You know why certain decisions were made, and you can help prepare your other departments accordingly. I want to take a moment to remind you that generally speaking, production does not make creative calls. I said before that production is usually considered a service department and role. Therefore, it is not within our domain to be making creative calls. You can and should speak up if you see a technical error on screen, but I would advise you to do so only after your supervisors and directors have said their piece. For example, if you know the character should be holding a blue flower in the shot and instead they're holding a red flower, you may say so if your team doesn't catch the error. This is not to say that production has no ownership over the show. Of course we do. I mean that we should be mindful about what that ownership looks like per studio expectations, as it can vary dramatically. Trust your teams. They will do their best work if you're not acting like a backseat driver. The last thing I wanted to go over in this discussion of working with your direct reports is, of course, boundaries. Remember, production, more often than not, has to be the villain. We are the ones delivering the bad news. We are the ones enforcing and tracking OT. You want to be friendly and approachable with your teams, and you also need to be able to bring the hammer down when required. Try your best to remain neutral and professional. I know this is difficult amid the exciting, high-energy environment of an animation studio, and it's also more respectable in the long run. Your team wants to be able to trust you, and they want to have confidence that you have the grace and professionalism to navigate trickier situations when they arise.